Hey guys! Welcome back to my channel, Casting Corner. I have an amazing guest with me today. This is Laura Otten.
Hi.
Funny, talented, amazing Laura Otten.
I'll keep going.
Keep going. Beautiful, kind.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being honest.
Yeah.
Laura works at Wendy O'Brien Casting right now, which she's been in for like a while.
Yeah, 5 years in like a week.
Wow!
I know.
Happy 5 year.
Thank you.
Happy 5 year. So let's just talk really quickly. Tell me where you're from, how you got into casting, where you've worked, and what you've worked on, and what you're working on now.
Yeah.
Follow the flow.
I'm from the Metro Detroit area,
okay.
Outside of Detroit. Casting, I feel like many of us, I kind of fell into.
Yes. I actually tripped and fell into it.
I think at my core, storytelling's kind of always been what's been interesting to me and people, and so writing, acting. I come from a theater background, did public speaking in high school, all that kind of stuff. And so when I went to college, I ended up studying English and theater and then media arts, which was our like filmmaking degree. And I sort of found at that time that there sort of seemed a need for somebody to kind of work as an intermediary between the two departments, because we had these amazingly talented actors that just didn't have access to filmmakers, and then filmmakers who were making things that were beautifully shot, but using their friends and stuff, so perhaps wasn't realized in the way that they would want to in terms of compelling storytelling. So I was kind of working on that, and then meanwhile, this was back when Michigan had a really good film incentive. We subsequently, the same governor who is responsible for like poisoning the kids in Flint, got rid of our film incentive. But prior to then, there was a lot of work in film. So while I was in college, I ended up working in background casting for a second. So that was my first exposure to it.
How was that?
I loved it. Worked with these lovely women, Kathy and Rose, and they were really talented, really passionate, and just brought me in right away. And I only worked with them for a summer, but it was just enough to sort of dip my toes and see what even that world might be. Obviously, background is a totally different beast than principal casting, but just to even see that was something that was needed.
Yeah.
So as I was wrapping up school, I kind of thought maybe that was, casting was what I would want to explore. So I thought for a little while I was going to work in advertising, but that sort of went away. So ended up moving out to LA about a year after I graduated from college, and then was like, I had no idea what to do. I didn't know anybody out here other than other grads from my school, but in terms of people who were connected or whatever. So started applying to casting assistant jobs, but realized they were all asking for knowledge of this system called Cast It, which I had never seen before. And so I ended up seeing that they had an opening, so I applied for that and ended up working at Cast It for 3 years.
What?
I know.
That's crazy.
So, yeah,
I almost worked at Cast It. Hi, Chris and Eric.
Hi, Chris and Eric. Everybody should work at Cast It if they can, because they were the best bosses ever. They were so nice, so lovely. Wendy's also great. Yeah. But I was brand spanking new to LA, and they took a chance, and that was really nice. And so while I was at Cast It, I kind of got to see the lay of the land of sort of different offices and how things may work. Wrote out a couple pilot seasons with them to just kind of see what that was like. And then they were very supportive, because I'd been pretty upfront from the get-go of like casting is ultimately what I wanted to do. So then when it was time to transition away from that, I ended up interviewing for an assistant job with Wendy. And Wendy's my one and only. I've only worked for Wendy.
That's
out
crazy.
Here. I know.
That's rare.
Yeah, and I got trained from a pup. Like, I came in and I had zero experience, and speaking of taking chances, she took a huge chance, like a huge risk. Because back at that time too, the development program that the CSA has, I think, didn't exist yet, so the only way that you could get that experience was
being thrown in.
Yeah, exactly, being thrown in. So I got put on 2 pilots. I know.
That's your first thing?
That was my first thing.
What?
I know.
That's a lot.
That was definitely trial by fire.
Yeah. What pilots were they?
It was Dolores and Jermaine for ABC.
Okay.
And Cuckoo for NBC.
And neither of those went, I'm assuming.
No. I actually have a terrible track record with pilots in terms of stuff going. Like,
Is it
so, I might be the through line. It's maybe worth looking into, but not
you
too
had a
closely.
terrible record in the sense of what? So like,
oh no, just in terms of stuff getting picked up.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, so it goes. And I've been very lucky that a lot of the stuff I've worked on has gone straight to series. But in terms of like pilots, either they haven't gone or they've been location places. So like ended up
somebody else does the series.
Exactly. But
so, and then you've been with Wendy for 5 years now?
5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, in like a week.
Assistant to associate. When did you make the jump?
About a year and a half, 2 years,
That's
maybe. It was really great because I worked on as an assistant season 2 of a show called You're the Worst on FX. FXX, I guess, at the end. And and then the associate that had been on the show ended up leaving before season 3, so I ended up stepping in for season 3. And that's the show where I qualified and, you know, joined the union and all that. But it was great because it was a show that I had kind of gotten to grow with too. So like grew ups a little bit and was like a little bit of a less intimidating transition, I think, than may have been otherwise.
So talk about Cast It for a sec, just for people that don't know what Cast It is and what you did there. Like Cast It is this system that a lot of the studios and networks use to upload auditions and watch auditions, so everyone has access, they can see the auditions and stuff like that.
Exactly. A way to localize auditions and, you know, make sure that everyone can see them, so it's really convenient. And now being on the casting side, I love it because it's a place where you can upload all the videos and like keep track of where everybody is, send them to producers. And because I feel like these days a lot of the time producers and directors are no longer able to be in the room.
So they just can pop in to Cast It, they have their own login and password and just go and be like, oh, these are the reads, these are our favorites, these are the callbacks, these are the this, these are that.
Right, and it's nice too because then it is more conducive, I feel like, to having people be considered from self-tapes. Which I don't know if you've seen that too, but since we can localize all the self-tapes, people who aren't in town aren't necessarily at as big of a disadvantage as they may otherwise be. But yeah, so while I was there, my main job actually was working on Cast It Talent, which was the side that actors and managers would use to submit tapes.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, and helped coordinate some of the open calls. So when Star Wars, the Force Awakens, they did an open call, which I think there were 26,000 submissions or something of self-tapes. Yes. So we were helping coordinate those, so making sure that all of those self-tapes got from point A to point B, and then all of the in-person open calls that they did, helping to coordinate those was like mainly what I was doing there. But I would also occasionally like go, you know, take cameras to people and like help them set up, or like troubleshoot or.
And they were launching like a pilot program of like having schedules and such, like people using Cast It to schedule actors.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, so I left Cast It in 2015. Like pilot season 2015 is when I transitioned over. So back then it was like pretty small and like I think all that was sort of getting off the ground. But I do remember those talks. When were you?
Probably like 2016, 2017.
Okay, yeah. So
I worked with them for a little bit, but it was very like part-time. Like I was testing out their software from a casting perspective. Be like, I like this.
That makes sense.
I don't like this. Like this is easy for me to do. The scheduling and the like setting up actors and like organizing them, and there's something else that I'm forgetting now that they had me do, but it was it was a very cool thing. Yeah. You guys had a really cool idea. I don't remember so look it up later. But love you. So let's talk about Wendy and Wendy's office and working there, and tell me everything and tell me all the things.
Yeah, so I think it speaks volumes that like to be at one place for 5 years, which like you said, it's rare. Not it's pretty rare. So she's been so lovely about looking out for her employees. Like that's really important to her. And there's a guy there who you've met, Chris, who has been with her for I think going on 11 years this year, which is even crazier.
Chris,
so
we're gonna have you on here later.
He'll do it.
He's an actor too. He's like me. Rare.
Yes. But yeah, it's great. Right now there are 3 associates and
Claire's the other one. We're also gonna have her later. Hi Claire.
Hi Claire.
Hi Claire.
We'll occasionally have like some assistants or interns or whatever. Sometimes productions will pay for an assistant, and a lot of the time they won't. Yeah. So
they don't want. Usually for a pilot, you can get both. An associate and assistant. Usually,
not always.
Sometimes it's a fight with like some of the cable networks.
Some companies.
Right. When we can have them, we do.
Yeah. But usually for a series, they don't give you both.
Usually not. I have on occasion had
if
an
it's like a
assistant on
high
a series.
volume series that shoots in LA. If it doesn't shoot in LA, no way.
No. Although weirdly for Wendy, like she keeps ending up on projects that shoot here.
Really?
Like it's just one of those. She's like, I don't know how it happened. Like she's a total unicorn in that way, but like most of her stuff ends up shooting here.
All comedy or no?
Often.
Mostly comedy.
Yeah, I've mostly done comedy with her, and I think that's it's one of those like work begets work. But yeah, so I've mostly done half-hour comedy with her. 68 Whiskey, which I just wrapped on, is an hour long. That is like dramedy kind of, but
which you brought me in for a couple of times.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do it.
We'll do it.
Figure it out.
I'll get on it.
Yes.
Hopefully.
Fear the Walking Dead she did for 2 seasons, which is more drama, but yeah, mostly comedy.
Yeah, and she did all of It's Always Sunny, right?
Yeah, and still going on Sunny. Maybe season.
That's crazy. I love that show.
I know it's about
like season 14 or 15.
I think 14 or 15. It's like breaking some record for the amount of seasons for.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, like the only thing more than that is probably Grey's Anatomy, but like in a comedy world.
Yeah, it was like I think it's some random like Ozzie and Harriet or something. It's like more episode. I don't know. Whatever.
Does Chris do Sunny?
Jeff does.
Oh. So Jeff partners with her.
He comes back for that. Yeah. But yeah, it's great. And it's funny because like my personal taste in television, I tend to be drawn more towards hour-long drama. But I find comedy is so much fun to work on.
I bet. I really want to work on a comedy. I worked on one multicam half-hour pilot that didn't go, but like I would love to work on a comedy series.
I've been super spoiled, like mostly single cam comedy. I feel like comedy is such a specific acting muscle. The other thing, we really love improv and being able to play. Yeah. So like that's great. And one of my favorite things I ever worked on with her was American Vandal, which I don't know if people have seen, but was like a faux documentary series, which was almost all improv. Like there was outlines of things. Like and we had scripts, but like people were allowed to riff, and like a big part of the audition process was people just kind of like going off. We'd be doing this,
That's so cool.
So that was so fun. And I loved that one too because it was really the first time I was there for building a world from the ground up, and like that was fun, and having it be a point of casting unknowns, which is always such a treat, to just like find new and interesting people and faces.
What are you currently working on with her?
I unfortunately can't talk about one of the things I'm working on right now.
Top secret. Cool.
But
that makes it more interesting.
I know. We can talk about it when it comes out.
Okay.
There's a Netflix show that we'll be starting on in a couple of weeks.
And you guys aren't on a pilot? It's
going to series, like it's a straight to series, and so I think I maybe dodged a pilot.
Yeah.
Which is great because pilots are great.
Are fun.
They're great, and it's how we get work, whatever. Right. But they do tend to be a lot of work.
A lot of time. 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the office.
Yeah, pilot season for everybody is a lot.
For agents or managers, for actors too.
Yeah, everyone. So just saying that casting is part of that. Yeah. We'll gladly do another one when it's time, but not hating not doing one right this second.
So many questions. For American Vandal, we'll talk about a little bit more about that, like improv audition process.
Yeah.
Because that's something that
I love that. And actually, that's something that Wendy excels at and is so fun. She's really great at playing with actors.
She's so warm and welcoming in the room. She makes you feel so special.
Yeah, she's incredible with actors. Loves to play and loves to improv. That was really fun to just kind of, and I got to do it a little bit as well, but just watch her.
Do you normally run camera and she reads kind of thing?
Normally. Yeah, it was just really fun to see her steer them. But mostly, I feel like mostly when we're involved in improv, like on the casting side, we're just trying to be a conduit, right? For the actors. So that's also a pretty fine line to walk, I feel like, where you want to keep it going, but really cede the space to your scene partner.
What was it just like they give you like kind of a prompt of a scenario?
Yeah. So there were scenes that were like more traditional scenes that they read just sides from. And then what we would do is when we set people up for the show, we would tell them just be ready to improv in the room. And we would have talked to the producers and the director. They would give us like, here's some prompts that you could play with them with. So like one of them I remember in the audition process for the first season was like, can you describe the bases? Like, so making up for space, whatever. What do you think those are? And they take it and run with it. And then almost like an interview, it would be the sort of thing where you want to feature them most heavily, but how can you prompt them to give them something that they can still take it and run with? And like if it's going off the rails, how can you steer them back a little bit? So similar, I feel like similar muscles.
In general, for normal auditions, do you guys like a little improv? Do you like buttons? Do you not like buttons? Do you like improv?
And it could be because I work with Wendy and she's a huge fan of buttons, but I also like a button because we can always edit it if it doesn't work. Like, our job is to make the actors look good, right? So we're going to do whatever makes you look best. It's nice because it can give a sense of personality and a sense of like what you may bring to it that is different.
And also an understanding of the role and the
exactly,
character.
And the tone and just all
Unless
of it.
Unless the button's off. It's
like, right, well, and in which case then you just don't, exactly. I like a button.
And what about improving with the dialogue?
I think it's all about context and the project. Sometimes you work on things where the writers are more precious about it and it won't make sense to improv.
Right.
Sometimes they'll say, we want to see what people bring to it, and like if they find places that they want to play, that's fine. And usually it's more appropriate in comedy. But it depends on the comedy, because sometimes that's also been very specifically crafted.
Right,
you know, so I would say that there's not a blanket answer. You know, it's like,
is that something that actors could like ask beforehand? Like, is it okay
course.
I can improv in this or
and
not?
That's
or something that you guys are like, they're okay with improv.
Yes, we'll do our best to give people a heads up either way, but it's always fair to ask.
Yeah.
Always fair to ask. Again, we're all just trying to make the best work possible and give you the best chance at getting the job.
What about if actors want to ask for like an additional take?
Again, it's reading the situation. I like to respect, because actors have taken the time to come and to prepare the material, you know, so you want to, again, be the most conducive to the best work. If it's a full waiting room, you know, and it's like a really long scene and people are behind, like then it's kind of like feeling that out. But unless it's an exceptional circumstance, like I think we're usually pretty generous with offering additional takes. But I feel like actors in general would like to go all day, which makes sense, because you're like, okay, I could always like tweak this and make this better. And that's where I would also come from as an actor. But being on our side, and I'm sure you see this when you're on the other side of the camera too, is that there's a point at which you can overwork it.
Yeah.
And there's a point at which like you're just throwing the same stuff at the wall. So you can walk away and know that you've done the best already, and take 2 may well be better than take 10. But as like a safety blanket thing, like if we're able to do that, I feel like we do.
Do you normally send more than one take on to the producers?
No, we usually pick the best take, but if there are 2 that are both excellent but maybe like different tonally, you know, it's like, okay, well here they can do both, or we're not sure exactly which you're going for, but like we like both of these interpretations.
Yeah.
Here you go. Can
you go through like the process on a show that's here? You really break down how many submissions you normally get, how many people you bring in, how many people you send on, how many people you have callbacks with, if you have callbacks, or if the producers are not in the room.
It will depend on how specific the breakdown is. I would say if it's a co-star that is open, you know, in terms of like age or ethnicity, or even only has one of those parameters, if it's like, you know, a female 30 to 40 or whatever, we might get 2,000 or 3,000 submissions. If it's something a little more specific, like as you know, on 68 Whiskey, we were looking for Pashto speakers. That's a smaller field, you know, so you might get not even 100, you know, it depends. Typically, and again, I would say for a co-star, we'll bring in around 10 actors, and then if everybody's great, you know, you may send all 10, but like usually looking to send 7, 8, something like that. That is something that I try to emphasize with actors too, because auditioning in person can be such a daunting experience that you've won a huge battle by being in the room and being one of the people chosen to be in the room, because you've gone from one of 3,000 to one of maybe 10. And the whole cliche of booking the room is true too, that even if you don't get it that time, if you do well, then you're on the brain, and we're humans and just think of people we know, so keep bringing them back.
Yeah. He does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you normally have callbacks for co-stars?
Oh, that's right. No. Most of the time I would say the co-stars are off of tape, and usually not callbacks. Usually it's just a straight, because there's usually not time for callbacks. Right. It depends. We worked on Dave, which was also a very improv heavy show, and in that case there weren't callbacks for the co-stars, but the prods were still in for the co-stars because they wanted to see the improv muscles. But yeah, usually not callbacks for co-stars. Even these days for guest stars, I feel like I don't see callbacks very often. It might depend on the show, and it could just be my own personal experience and what I've happened to be put on. But really, the only time I see callbacks tends to be for series regulars.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Good to know.
Yeah, and then maybe like a heavy recurring guest star or something like that.
Right. My hat's gone.
I don't know what
Confused! We'll make it.
Okay.
You guys, if you hear a little drip, 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 that's the rain. It's raining. It's Oscar Sunday. You guys won't watch this, obviously, for a little later, but it's Oscar Sunday.
I am stoked about the rain.
I'm stoked about the rain.
I love rain. I'm from somewhere with rain, so
I've heard of this thing called rain.
That's right.
It sounds amazing. I've yet to experience it, but it's
One day.
Anything about the Oscars you want to talk about real quick? Anyway,
I am pulling hard for Parasite.
Oh,
it
me
is
too.
the best thing I've seen in theaters in
Parasite.
years. Yeah,
So
it was so great. So I want it to win all the things.
Yeah, funny is
so
that?
good.
And the fashion. See what people are wearing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it.
We'll see.
I like it.
Yeah.
One day maybe we'll be wearing stuff in there.
Listen.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yep. I'm gonna bring back the Bjork Swan dress.
Ooh.
If
fun.
I ever go to the Oscars. So you
When
heard it here
you go
first.
to the Oscars, not
when
if.
I go to the Oscars,
When.
I'm wearing a swan dress.
Yes. When you like someone, how often do you bring them back in for the same show? Do you wait? Is there like a kind of like we don't want to saturate the producers
Right.
with the same people kind of thing, or like people that like you that have been in your office and that you like them and they feel like you like them, but then they don't come in for 2 years and like they're like, why aren't they calling me in? Or,
Right.
do they remember me? Or
Right.
do they really remember me?
Right. Well, I think sometimes, to answer the last part first, sometimes when we don't see people, it has to do with just the specificity of the stuff that we've had to see lately. Like, I keep going back to 68 Whiskey because that's what I just came off of. But I think other than the series regulars, there were probably fewer than 10 roles for other women. Just, and you know, military show, whatever, that was just the nature of it, but really great ladies who are maybe like, oh, I haven't seen Wendy in a while, what's going on? And it's like, there literally hasn't been a role for you lately. Like so much of, unfortunately, the actor journey, given that it's like such a vulnerable thing, is that to not take that personally, and you can add it to the laundry list of things. But I would say that, and we were talking about this earlier too, that like it's our job to remember people so that
Rolodex.
Yes, so we do remember, and people that we love, we do bring back, and often for the same show, as you have experienced, but also sometimes for different shows, because like you said, you don't want to necessarily throw the same 6 people over and over and over at the producers to be like, just put them in the show, like sometimes, but that has to be calculated, right? There's not an exact science to it, it's all just kind of feeling it out, feeling the project out, how many roles are on the project, you know, like, how specific is this role? But all of the cliches about booking the room are so true in that, you know, even if you're not right for this thing at the moment, or if you were right, but perhaps a different choice was made, we'll remember that and we'll bring it back.
Do you guys keep notes of actors in breakdowns?
I mean, I don't. That would be probably smart, but no, I don't. Like, I'll sometimes like have mental notes, or like I'll write things on my session sheet, but there's not like a formal system for us.
Do you go back through your session sheets often?
Sometimes. I wouldn't say often, but like sometimes for me it'll be like, oh, we have this role. Oh, this is kind of similar to this thing. Oh, who read for that? Oh, I have a little heart next to this person. Like, okay, great. You know, that sort of thing.
Oh, a little heart.
Yeah.
When you need people to speak a different language.
Yeah.
How does that whole process work if you don't know the language or don't know the people that can speak it? Or like, always people will be like, okay, I can speak it, or agents will say it.
Right, and then you're like, but can you though?
Yeah.
And that actually happened on Whiskey a couple times, and luckily people were forthcoming, but if we were specifically looking for Pashto and someone would come in and they're like, well, I don't speak Pashto, but I speak Dari, and you're like, that might work for some of the roles, but maybe not this one. Like, I don't know. But on that show, we did have people watching tape who knew, so that was good. But in general, when we don't know, like, the best I can do is just try to still be an active listener. I don't know, it sounds cliche to be like, be true to the spirit of it, but just to try to treat it like any other scene and hope that what they're saying is right, which is not ideal. And I think, you know, in a perfect world, you'd have people reading who spoke it, and also then there's all the questions about, like, you know, the labor of, like, if you're asking an actor to translate it themselves, like, that all I feel like gets gray as well.
Oh, interesting. You bring in the people, they speak, you take it and you send it on, and there's somebody on the other end that knows.
In this one, we had somebody who was specifically a consultant for, like, Afghan culture and speaks Pashto, Dari, and knew those, and there were enough other actors as well that, like, if you didn't speak it, you were going to get caught.
Right.
You know.
Right.
But to your point, if it was just like one person and there wasn't anybody on the show who was accountable and they came in, it's like, I don't know. And actually, we have someone in our office who's a Russian speaker and, like, has watched things and been like, I can tell that they didn't have anybody because, like, either the accent was atrocious or, like, just sounded really different or was actual nonsense.
Right.
You know, she's like, what? So it is a deep-seated fear that I would work because, like, I barely speak English, you know, so, like, just being, like, not a polyglot. I'm not somebody who's going to be able to hold accountability for that. And I think the best you can do is just try to hope that there are other people on the production who can and do.
Yeah. It's good to know for actors, too, to not, like, fake it. Or...
No, please do not fake it. The chances are you'll get caught, and then, like, that's a big red X, you know? Like, because the whole thing is trust, right? Like, we try to build relationships of trust in the room, you know, to create a safe space for actors to audition. But at the same time, there's a reasonable expectation from us that you can do what you say you can do. You know, and I feel like that's any skill. You sometimes hear actor interviews of, like, famous actors who've been in films or stuff, and it was like, well, they asked me if I could horseback ride, and of course I said yes, but, like, then I couldn't, and, like, hung up, and immediately the next day, like, you know, started taking lessons, and people are like, ha ha ha, and I'm like, oh God, like, you know, like, if I was the office involved in that, like, if someone shows up on set and can't do what they say, that reflects really poorly on us, and that would just give me pause about hiring that person again.
There's somebody checking your language, so there's another layer before you book it.
And as we've established, that's not necessarily on every show, and I wouldn't say it has to be perfect, but please don't fake it.
Yeah.
Please. And also, it's just kind of a shitty thing to do, right? Because then you're taking an opportunity away from somebody who can and does and, like, may not have those opportunities normally, you know, so, like, please. Hi, puppy!
Hello! Oh, you're wet. That's Chai. Does the person on your show be like, okay, these people are good and these aren't? Or like... No,
it's more like our people will make a choice, and then I think there's...
So they'll pick somebody first, and then they'll be like, do we believe this person? Stumptown sometimes has Pashto, too.
They did in one episode.
Oh. The one episode that I went in.
And it's also different when it's another language, right? Like, you know, on Mayans they speak a lot of Spanish, and obviously you can't fake Spanish here.
Yo quiero Taco Bell.
Right. So
did I get it? Did I get it?